Angela, is Harry going to use this now to sort of say, oh goodness, they treat me so terribly?
I think he believes, and this might surprise you or not, that Meghan is the one who should take over.
As Queen?
Yeah.
Angela's story is particularly fascinating because you actually were the official biographer of Prince Harry. You got to know the guy. You interviewed him. He chose you, really, to be the journalist who he became closest to. So you have a particularly fascinating insight into what's gone on.
No, because whatever she tries to do, she's an absolute failure because she doesn't let anyone else who's got a lot of experience tell her what to do, give her advice. She thinks she knows the lot. I knew, and so I don't let that negativity come into me. I just say what I think, and that's it. You know, if he's now furious with me, then that's fair enough. But I have my own feelings and I just say them.
Meghan, it won't go back before she got married, but the way she's treated the royal family, the way she's actually not allowed her children to meet their family, and you can go on and on for what she said, all the lies she said. So she's not someone who can complain about ethical behaviour.
I think the Duchess of Sussex has a very different personality. I think that the Duchess of Sussex needs to prove herself non-stop. She takes on everything she possibly can because she needs to be out there in the front. She's not somebody who wants to work as a team. The Harry we knew has been destroyed by himself and by Meghan. And if he comes over and does any sort of give him a job to do, well, it's an absurd thing to say because he will, demand money for it. Meghan will demand money for it.
Angela, look. What's going on with Prince Harry and Spare?
He doesn't have any respect for us whatsoever, but he wants to take all the good bit. I mean, the couple do feel that they are very, very important and very, what they think is wonderful, and they are head of the global world.
Angela 11 didn't raise her voice. She wasn't angry, she wasn't dramatic. She was certain, and that certainty made people uncomfortable. When she said Harry sees Meghan as queen, the initial reaction wasn't outrage. It was laughter. People assumed it was symbolic, a careless phrase, or something taken out of context. But then the room went silent. Angela wasn't guessing. She had spent time with Harry before any of this. She had seen him when the cameras weren't rolling, when he moved freely within the system he was born into. She knew him. And she wasn't talking about fantasy.
If you're dealing with the royal family and their staff, that's what you have to be. Very, very patient. They don't make a decision quickly. They don't see you one time after the other. You have to go very, very slowly. Now, I like doing things really fast, so I have to sort of almost tie myself down to the ground and keep on. And the thing is not to give up, but to keep on asking nicely. When I went to see Harry, I went to the royal family. Sorry, when I went to see Harry, I went to discuss whether it would be okay.
She was talking about belief, not about Meghan wanting a crown, but about Harry rejecting the hierarchy itself, rejecting the idea that the order was fixed, that his place was settled, that those above him had earned it more than he had. That's dangerous. Because when someone stops accepting the structure around them, they don't try to improve it, they start looking for ways around it, through it, over it. Most people misunderstood what Angela revealed. This wasn't ambition. It was refusal. Refusal to accept limits, refusal to accept rank, refusal to accept no. And once that refusal takes hold, nothing that follows is random.
Harry sold absolutely huge numbers of the hardback all around the world. And it's quite interesting that hasn't moved forward. I don't know whether the person who was writing it for him decided that he couldn't stand it anymore, or he didn't want to, or he does want to and Harry doesn't want to. Perhaps Harry feels guilty now, the things he said that were so many lies and hugely upset the family. He washed their dirty linen, which didn't exist.
Every boundary becomes personal. Every correction feels like an insult. Every rule becomes proof of persecution. This story doesn't begin in California, it begins with a man who never truly made peace with where he stood. Harry grew up knowing exactly who he was. There was no confusion, no mystery, no broken promise. From the start, the message was clear. There would be a king, and it would not be him. 4 years. The world believed Harry had accepted that. He smiled, joked, and played the carefree prince, the one without the burden. The one who could relax because the crown belonged to someone else. But acceptance and performance are not the same. The problem was never being second. The problem was watching the distance grow.
Do you use going to see all the people you go when you're on engagement, soldiers who are wounded, young children who have had terribly difficult lives? Do you try to work through your own mental health issues while you're doing that? Now, this is before he'd met Meghan and before the whole mental health thing was really shining. So I asked him that, and he went silent for what seemed like 2 hours, but it was probably just a few minutes. I thought, he's going to throw me out, he's going to throw me out. And he didn't. And he said, well, you're absolutely right.
As William grew into responsibility, Harry remained stuck in a role that never matured. William was praised for discipline and restraint. Harry was praised for charm. And charm, over time, becomes a cage. Charm is tolerated, not trusted. That's where something hardened, not loudly, not all at once but in subtle patterns. Stories that always ended with him overlooked, jokes laced with a quiet bitterness beneath the humor.
His brother Prince William was barred from joining. Speaking on The Real Crown, the then head of the British Army, General Sir Mike Jackson, explained how the late Queen had at one point expressed her wish for both her grandsons.
Childhood grievances lingered long after most people would have let them go. The sausages, the bedrooms, the comparisons. They were never about food or space. They were about hierarchy, being measured, ranked, counted. And instead of resolving that pain, Harry carried it forward year after year, turning it into a story he replayed silently. He didn't reject being the spare. He fixated on it. So when someone later told him the system was unfair, it didn't sound extreme. It sounded like clarity, like someone finally voicing what he had always known.
The press and the actual king's one of his aides. And the last thing we want is that the king is involved in this in any way whatsoever, or any of his staff, because the whole thing really smells, and you can't do that. But what is extraordinary about Harry is that he feels that he can do things that other people he would attack and criticize, but it would be fine because he still is the prince and he can do this. And if he's going to court, it's up to the judge to listen to him, but not actually to ask for evidence. I don't think he's understood that from the beginning, because when he first went into the court case, he would say, they'd ask him a question, he said, well, can't you get the lawyer to look through that and sort it out? Which is what we don't do. If we need evidence, we have to find it and present it. But I think he was completely mystified by that, particularly by him, because he couldn't give the details, but he could give what he imagined or believed.
That wasn't rebellion, it was relief. And once relief replaces reflection, resentment stops being questioned and starts being justified. The early warning signs weren't in speeches or headlines. They were in behavior. Anyone observing their first joint appearances could feel it immediately. Something was off. Not scandalous, not explosive, just wrong. The rhythm didn't match the setting. The flow ignored the rules everyone else understood. Protocol isn't about ego. It's about structure. Who speaks first? Who steps forward? Who waits? It keeps chaos at bay. And then that structure started to blur. Meghan stepped forward. Harry stepped back. Observers weren't unsettled by confidence, they were unsettled by displacement.
They want the king. Harry wants the king to read this. He's trying to send a message to the king through the media again. So what was the point in doing the meeting, Charles? It's pointless.
It's very strange, isn't it? Because he goes to see Charles, he desperately wants to see him, he wants to be knighted again. And then the next week he does something completely the opposite.
makes it very, very difficult and becomes very rude. He does know how to behave up to a certain extent, and if he wants something, you have to be nice, you have to be soft, you have to go their way, you have to do what they want, and so they can see that you're improving. If you just say something, we don't know what he said this time, but if you then immediately afterwards you start lying and being aggressive, you're not going to get anywhere. So he sort of puts it down and then takes it away. I think this is Meghan. I'm sorry to say that again, but I think she watches everything he's doing and works out what to say and when, and keeps him in the most terrible state that he doesn't know where he is or how he can manage.
There was a sense that roles were being rewritten in public without explanation, without permission, without learning. To casual viewers, it looked like enthusiasm. To those who understood the institution, it looked like defiance. You don't improvise inside a system built on order. What made it worse wasn't the behavior itself, it was Harry's response. He didn't slow it down. He didn't correct it. He didn't quietly reassert his role. He allowed it. That mattered because it signaled that this wasn't something happening to him, it was something he agreed with. This wasn't about a forceful personality overpowering someone else. It was a man hearing his private resentment spoken aloud and choosing to follow it. For the first time, the hierarchy wasn't fixed. It was negotiable. And once hierarchy becomes negotiable, everything else follows. Once entitlement settles in, patience disappears.
She will take over. Meghan wants to be queen. You can't actually have her as standing there as a second person. So all that is nonsensical, actually. Very ridiculous. And she should know better. She's a marvellous journalist. But this is incredibly spiteful and ridiculous. She said one of the things that at the cenotaph, the king looked old and bleak without the usual supportive presence of Camilla. I imagine that he was thinking of his parents, because he remembers that being a very important day for those two. And I think that he feels for all the people who have died.
What came next wasn't confusion, it was pressure. Suddenly, nothing was enough. Not the support, not the security, not the money, not the access, not the global platform most people could barely imagine. Every boundary became an insult. Every rule became hostility. Every "this is how it works" became evidence of abuse. The complaints grew in scale. They weren't about isolated moments, they were structural. The entire institution was framed as broken, cruel, racist, outdated, unworthy. That framing matters. When the system itself is defined as corrupt, anything done to it becomes justified.
And he thinks that it was very bad that she wasn't questioned about what should be done to make the royal family more up to date. And she said herself that she felt that they should have asked her what should be done rather than Kate, because she is a self-made woman and she's got much more experience. Now that's a killer sentence.
Leaks became truth-telling. Smears became accountability. Public humiliation became moral duty. That's when people started feeling uneasy. Not because criticism existed, criticism always exists, but because it became total, absolute. There was no acknowledgement of privilege, no shared responsibility, no self-reflection, only blame. And notice who was never blamed. Not Harry, not Meghan. Everyone else became the villain: the palace, the press, the public. Even the late Queen's legacy was quietly reframed. This wasn't disagreement anymore. It was a campaign. And campaigns don't end with compromise, they end with collapse or resistance.
It really is. I often think about the late Queen, though, and the fact that she entrusted Harry and Meghan with protecting her beloved Commonwealth. And they told her that they had that shared belief. You'll remember the Commonwealth was even stitched into Meghan's wedding dress, for example. And now they use their platform and their media platforms to try and degrade the Commonwealth as some sort of racist, colonial, terrible reflection on Britain. That's Harry directly doing down the late Queen's life work.
For a long time, people misread the palace's silence. They thought it meant fear, guilt, or weakness. It didn't. It was restraint. Because when someone wants a public war, the fastest way to lose control is to give them one. Every response feeds the grievance. Every rebuttal becomes fuel. So the palace did the one thing obsession cannot survive. Nothing. No counters. No interviews. No corrections. That silence did something unexpected. It revealed the imbalance. The attacks didn't stop. They intensified. The claims grew broader, the tone colder, the accusations more extreme. That's when questions changed. If this is about healing, why does it never end? If this is about truth, why does it keep changing? If this is about justice, why is there always a new enemy? In that context, silence wasn't weakness, it was a mirror. And the reflection wasn't flattering. Because when one side refuses to escalate and the other can't stop, motive becomes impossible to ignore.
Meghan, who must encourage him, I find it difficult to think that she doesn't, because he does what he's told, and if she thought it was a very good idea, then he would do it. I mean,
Is he a smart guy?
She's destroyed all around all sorts of things. Her own family, it's only her mother was there at the wedding, all these things. You're not interested in her father, and yet she says compassion is very important to her. It's difficult to understand what she means about that when she won't even do anything now he's very ill. And I think that, you know, the African parks are in a terrible state, and there Harry was in a very senior position there, and now he's on the next grade down, and the people who are there in the parks are raping and fighting and humiliating people who just wander in it. And Harry's done nothing. I mean, he was a senior for quite some years, but he's still on the cards of running this, and it's very concerning that he doesn't seem to have done anything.
This stopped being about being heard. It became about control. And control, once it slips away, makes people reckless. Meanwhile, something else was forming quietly online. Anyone who questioned the narrative was swarmed journalists, commentators, ordinary people. It didn't matter how calm or factual they were. If they didn't repeat the approved story, they were attacked. Angela 11 experienced it firsthand. She wasn't just disagreed with, she was targeted, smeared, accused of things so extreme they had nothing to do with her work. What shocked people wasn't just the cruelty, it was the silence. The same people who spoke endlessly about online harm said nothing when it happened in their name. That's when public opinion hardened.
And she did say that she could carry on acting if she wanted to. But I think the more you think about it in retrospect, the more you see that whatever happened, she wasn't going to stay there. She was going to take Harry away because she's got what she wanted. She's got a title and she would have lots of money, but he hasn't got enough money for her. She's a bit upset about that.
She likes the billionaires, doesn't she? She wanted the big palace. She was so embarrassed, Angela, so embarrassed to have Oprah into that little palace at Kensington, the most prestigious address in London. I mean, where does she get off?
Because hypocrisy is easier to see than malice. If you campaign against misinformation while benefiting from it, people notice. If you speak about compassion while allowing others to be destroyed, people remember. The crowd didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew where grievance was rewarded and aggression excused as righteousness. And the question kept returning. Why condemn everyone else, but never this? That silence wasn't neutral, it was permission. Once people saw that, the story changed entirely. There is a line most people understand instinctively. Illness. When King Charles's diagnosis became public, people expected a pause. Not reconciliation, just humanity. It didn't come. Then Catherine's illness followed. A young mother, 3 children, the future queen suddenly absent, suddenly silent. Suddenly, the subject of rumors so cruel they shocked even hardened observers. Photos dissected, motives questioned, conspiracies spread, and again, people noticed who said nothing. No defense, no condemnation, no appeal for decency. That's when something snapped. Because this wasn't misunderstanding anymore, it was risk.
With this gang of internet trolls, which Harry and Meghan are at the forefront of, and their friends, their allies like Christopher Boozy and Omid Scobie are directly involved with. Why on earth, Angela, given they claim to be so opposed to internet trolling and disinformation online, why on earth have Harry and Meghan not condemned or disassociated themselves from the Sussex Squad?
Well, I think they have one very important rule, and that they are hypocrites, and what they tell us to do doesn't apply to them because they're so grand. I think that's as simple as that. So they can behave in any way they like.
Trust didn't just crack, it shattered. William saw it clearly. Protection became the priority. Not optics, not appearances safety. The door didn't close dramatically. It closed permanently. From that moment, reconciliation stopped being the goal. Containment became it. Once trust collapses, attention sharpens. People began noticing what had been overlooked before. Charities, patronages, responsibilities that come with moral weight. That's when Africa Parks entered the conversation. Harry's name once brought credibility. If he was attached, people assumed oversight and care. But reports surfaced that didn't match the image. Serious allegations, disturbing accounts, and the response? Silence. No urgency, no public demand for answers, no accountability.
It was done if they went to be with him to just show how more powerful they are, to show that they can actually smash things, because if they get him on board, it makes it more difficult for the royal family. I think it's dreadful, but I don't know that that's absolutely what they were going to do.
This time it didn't feel strategic, it felt selective. When outrage is reserved only for causes that serve you, people question sincerity. When activism appears only where cameras exist, people question motive. It wasn't just Africa Parks. It was the pattern. Announcements without outcomes, projects that quietly disappeared, promises that never materialized. Over time, credibility eroded not from one scandal, but from accumulation. And once credibility is gone, even the boldest claims lose weight, especially claims about leadership. By the time Angela 11 spoke, the shift had already happened. The public wasn't shocked because it was new, they were shocked because it explained everything. The resentment, the entitlement, the obsession with hierarchy, the refusal to accept limits. That's why the reaction wasn't fear.